Welcome to the Nutritious and Delicious podcast with me, Bethany. My mission is to support busy parents all over the world to learn time management while taking care of your nutritional, physical, and mental health. After all, a healthy family starts with a healthy parent. So I'm super excited. I have Rachelle here with me today. And Rachelle Rozon is a PSI certified maternal mental health coach. She specializes in maternal anxiety and depression, and Rachelle's approach to health and wellness centers around simplifying life and developing the relationship she believes matters most in life. And this is the relationship we have with ourselves. So I'm really excited today. This topic is going to be all about not good enough, the tapes we tell ourselves. So thank you so much for coming on the show here today, Rachelle. I would love for you to share a bit about your story and what led you to this topic here today on moms saying why they don't feel good enough.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited too. Love talking about these important things that people aren't talking about.
I know.
Yeah. So there's an episode that you and I have done as well, if people haven't heard that yet, where we talk about postpartum depression.
Yeah.
That's something that Bethany and I both experienced, and it was really a blessing in disguise for me because I was not aware that I was dealing with any mental health issues until I had a breakdown. And then everything became very clear, all of these negative habits and thought patterns that I had had throughout my life, which I wouldn't have become aware of had I not had that crisis level experience and had to reach out and get help. And so in the beginning, when I was really going through the hardest of it, I kind of went into a panic when I walked into the hospital to deliver. So up till that point, I was doing fine, walked into the hospital, everything just went downhill from there. And I basically was experiencing panic attacks on and off for about 4 months regularly. So I was exhausted. And that's when the tape started coming in of like, am I going to even survive this? Is this what motherhood is going to be like? Why didn't anybody ever tell me? Why is this happening to me? And you think that there is something wrong with you. That's what I felt. Especially because I have, 3 sisters. I have 3 sisters-in-law. No one ever had this kind of experience. And so I grew up like very much so involved with lots of kids, and just no one ever talked about this kind of stuff. And so I really, really felt terrible about myself. And it was when I started having intrusive thoughts when it was for me, okay, I have to get help. I have to do something. I can't live my life like this. I don't know what's going on, but it's not normal, and I don't want to live like this. And so thankfully, I was in a position where I was able to get a lot of help. I was able to, have a lot of contact with my doctor. I found a local support group. I was seeing a counselor. And the counselor is the one who really helped me understand that my thoughts and these tapes that I'm playing do not equal reality. So I don't have to believe them. And becoming aware of that, having somebody else tell me that, was a huge burden that got relieved, because up to that point, to the point I was 25 years old, I was so identified with my thoughts. I thought that my thoughts were my reality, my thoughts were true, and I had to have a professional psychiatrist come and be like, hey, that's not actually true. And I was like, wow, okay. And as I went through that first kind of 6 months, I was going to a support group every week. That was like my clinging on to hope. I was like, okay, I can go. Like, there are other women who are feeling like this. But outside of that, you would never know that, right? Like, if you're not immersed in the community of women that are really struggling, then it was just so taboo to talk about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I went, and I would go every week, and we would all talk about what was going on. And I was like, wow, like I'm not the only one who's talking about this, but why why does it have to get to such a crisis level to talk about it? Like, we need to be taking this back and just acknowledging that, generally speaking, we as moms are struggling. Like, we are having a hard time. And we need to get comfortable talking about it so that we don't have to go into this crisis mode, because it's some women don't make it out of it. And I just became very passionate about learning more about mental health and about, the conditioned self and the things that we've been brought up to believe and how that affects our lives and how we can change it. And then I just became very, very into learning everything I could about not being that way anymore, and helping other women understand that they don't have to have those thoughts either. Like, you can detach and you can change the tape.
Yeah, it sounds very similar. Obviously, we had this podcast before where we talked about postpartum depression and leading up to it, and it can happen to anybody. And I think there is a huge stigma in society around mental health. And I think why it gets to a point of, getting to a crisis, like you said, I think it's because we feel so shamed by society that we shouldn't know what we're doing, or we shouldn't have these feelings or thoughts going through our head. And I don't think a lot of people realize, you have a massive hormonal imbalance, after you've had a baby. And even during pregnancy, a lot of women are saying, I haven't even had the baby yet, and I'm already anxious, and your hormones are on a roller coaster. And you're also in a completely different life than you're used to. You don't get given a manual on how to, be a mom. And just like yourself, I think I went into being a mom, my first baby, with that notion of I should know what I'm doing. I was a previous nurse. I've babysat a lot. I know I've been around a lot of children. I've always wanted to be a mom. I played dolls, forever. And it felt so natural to me. But then when I had my baby, it was whoa, hang on a minute. Why am I getting all these thoughts and feelings? And why do I feel like I'm on edge or super anxious? Or again, and it's a kind of a scary place to be. And that's where I think the tapes of I feel like a failure. I don't feel good enough. I there must be something wrong with me. I've always wanted this, or I know how to look after children. What the heck is wrong with me? Right. So I think our thoughts become our feelings, and we start to believe them. I think when we live in them, and when we're not actually sharing with other people, like you said, and you were kind of getting that feedback of these aren't real, these are just thoughts that are going on in your head, but it's not your actual reality. I think a lot of women, that's where people suffer. They aren't doing anything about it, and they're living in it thinking this is their true self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which they struggle with.
It's not your true self. Your thoughts are not your true self. And a really good example that I like to use with people is if you're to close your eyes and imagine that you're, sitting on a beach in Hawaii with a cold drink in your hand and the sun is beating on you, that's a wonderful place to go in your mind. That's not reality either, but it's a positive, happy thought. And I think, most of us deal with negative thoughts forever. And it's not until they become scary that it becomes a problem, right? So just try to imagine, any thought is not a reality unless you take it on and create it into a reality. So I always try to make people create a happy place. With my clients, that's one of the things that I encourage them to do is find a place in their mind where they can feel safe. So it doesn't matter where you go, you can go internally into that safe place. That really helped me a lot.
It's a tough place to be. I want to actually go into, because both Rachelle and I work with moms, particularly moms that are struggling, anxiety, depression, not feeling good enough. I kind of want to hear from your side, what you hear from other women in your community, and I'll give you sort of some of mine and some of the problems that we see. And what we can do is we can talk about some solutions to this afterwards. So, why do you think that you have moms coming to you sort of saying these things? Do you think that they feel alone? Is there some sort of stigma that's maybe going on? Like, what do you sort of keep seeing like over and over again?
Yeah, for most women, it's definitely, I feel alone. They feel like they can't open up to the people they're closest to, like a lot of the times, depending on their culture. Even their partners, they're not comfortable sharing what's going on, whether it's because of a fear of judgment or because they just, quote unquote, should be able to handle it. And that's what really is heartbreaking to me, when they can't even tell their own partners. And so they really are dealing with everything alone. And then another thing that I found is when people, women will say, I'm not feeling good enough. It's like, well, good enough compared to what though? Like, what do you think you should be? And a lot of women will bring up social media, right? Because they're scrolling through their Instagram account, seeing all these moms with 3 weeks.
I roll my eyes on that one.
I know, yeah, hardcore.
Yeah.
And is a perfect example of this the other day. I was just picking my daughter up from school yesterday, and there's this mom with her new baby, and she's all like dressed up, and she has a bow on and stuff, and it's like all the moms are coming over, and it's like, yeah, this is great, but 24 hours ago you were like in bed crying because you can't pump or like whatever is going on. And social media, I think, is so toxic. Like there's great things like this that can come from social media, but I think that being a millennial mom is even more challenging because you have this falsely painted reality that everyone else is only showing their very best moments. It's like, that's not real. That is not motherhood. And so I just think it's added this whole other layer of self-deprecation or whatever you want to call it. Like, it's just bad.
Right. It's interesting that you say that, because I laugh because all I could imagine was when you say like a baby with a big pink bow on and everything. When I had my 2 boys, I sort of had that like, oh yeah, I get to dress them up and they get like be dolls and they get to look all cute. But my boys both had really, really bad reflux. So it was like any outfit they had on, they were just like covered in barf. So all I could imagine was this cute little like baby, you said, sitting there with a bow on. And if it was my kid, it'd be like, okay, just barf everywhere. And like the whole suit would be ruined. And that would be like my life where I'd be like, yeah, this happens all the time. So it just... And it's hard because like when we talk about reality, social media is another one. Like you said, like it can portray something really false to people, or it can be raw. And I do see both worlds on social media. I see a lot of people talk about like the hard stuff, and other people don't like that, like a conversation, and they're like, I don't want to be around that. Like I don't want to kind of go that direction. But also, this is a place where a lot of parents, a lot of women especially, are coming to vent and talk because you said they don't have a partner that understands, or they're single parenting and they've got a lot of little kids and they're like, this is tough. Like I have kids around me all day long. My in-laws don't get it. My partner doesn't get it, or I don't have a partner. So they're coming to this social place to feel safe enough to actually like talk and vent. But again, you also need that solution as well, I find, like, because the more you kind of just keep talking negatively and you're not doing anything about it, that's where it can lead like down a bit of a rabbit hole too. What I noticed in like dealing with a lot of women and coaching and stuff is there's a lot of hidden resentment, becoming a mother, and the feeling of giving up your life. A lot of women that come to me have had careers, they're successful in their business, or they've been a teacher or a nurse, or they've had some kind of education, and they're like, okay, well, now I'm giving that up to be a stay-at-home mom. And you feel really successful in your work, and then all of a sudden you feel like such a failure as a mom, and you're like, how does this happen? So it kind of either makes them want to go back to work, and then they feel shamed because it's like, well, you should be a stay-at-home mom, you should be breastfeeding, you should be doing this. And again, that's society conditioning them. And obviously it's hard too, like dropping your baby off or your little kid off at daycare. And then there's the mom guilt that goes with it. Like there's enough mom guilt to go around anyways. But this is what I see with like a lot of professional women that are in the workspace. It's like, well, I don't feel like whole and content at home. I love being a mom, but I can't do it 24/7. And they want to go back to work where they do feel like, successful. And then when they do that, it's like, then they're kind of beaten down for it as well. So it's tough. It's tough either way. It's tough being a stay-at-home mom. It's tough being a working mom. And I notice a lot of the resentment happens around, it could be other moms that, like you said, on social media, where they feel like, well, you have an amazing life. How are you doing this? And lucky you. But you also don't see behind the scenes of what happens in other people's lives. So that's one thing. And another thing is, a lot of women get really upset with their partners, especially if they are male partners, because it's like, well, you didn't have to give up anything. I gave up my body, I give up my time. And it's almost, again, another society push or cultural push of like women doing a lot of the work. Now we've got some great dads in the community as well. And like, I love that. I love seeing that. But I find on a general basis, a lot of women secretly resent their partner because they get to work and they don't have that mom guilt. They get to be the fun dad. So I see that a lot as well. So what do you think about what I just said there?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I feel like it's all very correct. I feel like the first thing is like, no matter what you're doing, like if you're a working mom, stay-at-home mom, part-time, whatever you're doing, you have to find a balance. So it doesn't matter what category you fall into, you're responsible for finding something that fills you up. And This is, like that typical saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. It's true. So no matter what you're doing, make sure that you're finding some way to take care of yourself at least once a week, because that's going to help with the exhaustion. It's going to help with the resentment. It's going to help you have a better life, generally speaking. You have to take care of yourself.
Right.
You do not have time to not take care of yourself. You have to do it. And then the partner thing, I find too exactly what you're saying. There can be so much resentment, but what I also find is that a lot of women don't even speak up.
Yeah.
So, like communicating is hard, and this was something I had to learn when I was married, like saying what you need to say without being a bitch. I don't know if we're allowed to swear on here.
It's fine.
You can edit it out.
Yeah.
If not,
no worries. It's true.
I think a lot of women, feel like in order to get their point heard, they have to yell.
Yeah.
But really, if you just approach whatever you need to say in just a kind, honest way, and then let your partner respond. So when I was in marriage counseling, we had to do this exercise where you had to just say something, and then you had to let your partner respond, and you could not interrupt them until they told you they were done. And it was the hardest exercise I've ever done.
Oh dear.
But I learned so much, because I was like, wow, I typically don't even let you finish a sentence. And so you have to communicate, because if your partner doesn't know what's going on with you, they cannot help you.
Typically when people are interrupting a lot, or they're not listening, and they think they're listening, but they're just talking and they're not sort of grabbing what you're saying, it's usually a feeling inside that you don't feel heard. So a lot of women, again, feel that way, like they're not going to be heard. So that's where the screaming and the yelling come into play. And it happens with children too, where, you feel like you're repeating yourself and you're like, how am I not getting through to them? Or you kind of, again, this is another tape. You already have a tape in your head. Well, my partner's not going to listen to me. So you've already developed this story that like I have to be on the defense. So now you're going in like this super defensive mode, and they're like, whoa, like I didn't even know like this is what you were asking me. But again, you got to come in a way and find obviously a place where, they're not tired, you're not tired, and you can kind of just sit and have a proper conversation. Because a lot of the times I find, obviously, because we're like, super busy throughout our day with kids and school and scheduling, blah, 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 blah. If you don't sort of set a bit of time aside to actually have like an adult conversation with your partner, it's going to fly off the handle at like the most random times. And it could be out with your family, in front of relatives, and like, imagine how that's going to go. And a lot of families, that's how they function.
Yeah.
Right? So,
absolutely.
With all of this, what would you say you do for yourself, or do you teach to your mom clients to actually help them with some tools around this problem?
Yeah, so the first thing that I always teach my moms is centering yourself. So breath work to me is really important. I feel like everyone can commit to 2 minutes a day. Wake up, set a timer, 2 minutes. That's a great way to start your day by breathing into your own body, coming into yourself rather than rushing out of bed and doing all the things. Like, just take a sec to get into your own self. Is really great. And then I also recommend journaling, which I usually say at the end of the day. Again, 2 minutes. You don't have to like sit down for 45 minutes and write an epic saga, like just some of the things that are going on in your mind. And then when you look back at it over time, that's when you really start to see the way that you're speaking to yourself. And that's when those tapes can become really clear. And it's like, oh, okay, I haven't been being very kind to myself. Or, you know, look at everything that's going on. It's no wonder I'm stressed and feeling exhausted. And then you can be like, oh, well, have I had self-care? No? Okay, well, it's time. So you just have to start paying attention and being aware, because you can't shift out of anything if you're not aware of what's already going on. So there's that. And then the other thing that I really have adopted that's been super powerful for me is positive affirmations. So I do those every single morning. And some people will just read them. I personally like to listen to them. So I go onto YouTube and I search videos. There's a lot of videos that have like some relaxing wake up music. You feed your mind positive thoughts before you're if you do it first thing in the morning, you're still kind of in that subconscious mode, and it will shift your thinking if you do it on a regular basis. And then I like to also post them around my house. So I'm really creative. Sometimes I'll like get a canvas from the thrift store, and my daughter and I will sit down and like paint an affirmation, and then we'll stick it up. It's on the wall. You can look at it every day. It reminds you whatever it is that, you know, what the very first one we ever did was be gentle with yourself. And so it's like, whatever you're going through, just like be gentle. It's okay. It's going to be okay. Just reminding yourself.
I love these. I'll touch on a few of those because I just wrote a few down as you were talking, and that's great. I love how you're kind of, obviously with all the panic and stuff that you've experienced before, the breathing would be something massive because it would calm your body down right away. And I find that works really well for children too. Like, I've actually had to teach that to my eldest son, who is quite an anxious little boy. So we usually like get them to do breathing when they're feeling angry or they're feeling super anxious. That's really good, like in the moment when you're kind of like, okay, stop and think, like just calm down, like, because he's kind of on a bit of a rant about something, and I'm like, ooh, chill, okay, like let's take a minute and let's all breathe together. And sometimes we do that if we're driving as a family in the car and like there's a heated or there's a crazy conversation going on, or they're fighting with each other, the little guys, and I'm like, okay, let's take a moment. That's amazing. I like the journaling as well. I do that myself because I find with journaling, sometimes when you don't want to voice what's going on, you're kind of like, I've got something in me, but I feel really anxious and I don't want to talk about it. And journaling it, I think, really helps kind of just like gets it all out, and you kind of just put it on paper and you're like, great. And what I usually like to do with them is I like to burn them after. So it's like a bit of a seance. So I put it like in a pot and I light it on fire. And obviously be careful, like this is a fire safety hazard, people. So don't burn your house down, please. But I put it in a pot, I light it on fire, and it's a way of me like releasing the negative for myself. And I've done that for my boys too, where if I've got them to write something, like they're really upset about something, I'm like, I'll burn it for you. Like, don't let kids play with fire, please.
Yeah.
And then the affirmations I love, because part of my mommy membership, I do actually do a lot of voice visualizations, affirmations. So you can listen to them while you're, having a nap and waking up in the morning, and it's like that subconscious, and it's helping. And the reason I did that is because when I was going through such a hard time myself, I woke up every day like yourself with like YouTube affirmations and just listening to like a calming voice. It was like I was adopting somebody else's like positive energy, and I loved it, and it really helped. And when I felt anxious at nighttime, I would put these like affirmations in, and I would fall asleep listening to them while I went to sleep, which was amazing. And then I also have the affirmations as well on the membership, where I post them on my wall. So I have them all pretty in pink, and you've done them creatively. I like that idea. And I posted mine basically on my bathroom wall. And every time I brush my teeth, so that's twice a day, I'm reading my affirmations to myself as well. So that's great. It's like you're getting the sort of words through your ears, and then you're also reading it as well. So you're kind of getting a double take of it, which is amazing. I love that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The other two things I wanted to add in, just for moms, in terms of being able to sort of break down that not feeling good enough and feeling resentful, is taking some daily time for yourself. I know you said once a week. I personally, I was obviously a widow, and I had my boys on my own for several years where I was a single parent. For me, because it was so intense, having so much energy around me, I needed to sort of remove myself for 30 minutes every day. And it became a necessity thing for me, because I noticed if I didn't sort of take that time away from sort of the chaos and the noise of the boys, and not anything bad, just like a lot of noise and stimulus for me. If I didn't do that, then I was sort of like on edge, and I was getting worse throughout my night. And I'm like, and then I would almost just feel like I need to like get away. Like I need to, have more time to myself. So what I started to do was I just started to take about 30 minutes and would maybe just go lay on my bed. And sometimes I would fall asleep, or I'd listen to a meditation. And that includes also taking like a hot bath, or just relaxing and doing a bit of journaling or something like that, or reading a few chapters of a book. So it doesn't have to be much, but it's just a bit of a breather for yourself. The other one too is for moms, working out. Like for myself, I know a lot of people like, well, I don't have time to work out. I prioritize, and I've been a single parent. I still make time for myself, 20 minutes at least, just to do a workout a few times a week. And that's more for my mental health, because I'm trying to push out that energy of like that anxiety, that anger, those pent up feelings that I can't always verbalize for myself. So that's kind of another way that I like to do that as well. So what's your thought on that one?
Yeah, I think if you can do something every day, do it. I do something every day too. My morning and my evening are when I spend 20, 30 minutes to do something nice for myself.
I love that.
But I know that's overwhelming for a lot of women. So that's why I say just once a week, you can make that happen for sure. But yeah, every day is better for sure. And I think that moving your body is so, so important. But I think a lot of the times when women hear the term like workout, they think that like freaks them out, because they think they have to like get really into it and like have a big sweat and stuff. For me, I do the exact opposite. I am on the floor, like, I'll just do like squats, and then I'll do some crunches, and then I get down and I just stretch. Like I'll do my own kind of yoga version of just getting centered. And, it doesn't have to be this big extreme thing. Just get your body moving, so you are not just sitting on the couch, because it's not good for your body, and that really affects your mental health as well, right? Like we've become such a potato kind of society, where we just, you come home and the TV's on, and it's on until you go to bed. And that was the biggest shift I think that I made when I got divorced, was just like, we don't even have a TV, and it's awesome, because there are hundreds of thousands of other things you could be doing.
Yeah.
But when you have the TV, it becomes like an addiction. Yeah. It really does. You just put it on, you lose all your gusto to do everything else, and it's a vicious cycle. And then the kids start to get these behavior issues because they're overstimulated, and just like turn the TV off, like put a podcast on or something, like a kid's podcast or like an audio book. Get on the floor, move your body, just like think outside the box, right? Because obviously what's happening in society, what most people are doing, isn't working very well.
Exactly. I definitely think an everyday thing. I think you and I are at the point now, we've built up such a daily routine that we've both gotten into like the 20, 30 minutes for ourselves. I would suggest to moms when they first do start this and they do feel overwhelmed is start with like 5-10 minutes and then increment your day and add a few minutes to that and get to 15 minutes, see how you feel. Because the more, like you said, you start with sort of stretching, a little bit of yoga. It's not like you have to do a full hour workout, or anything like that. Or, half an hour of meditation. It can just start with like a 5-minute podcast on breathing and slowing down and maybe just writing a few notes down about how you feel in your day. So I think that's probably the best place for most moms to start if they are feeling super anxious and super overwhelmed. Well, I really appreciate you coming on here today, Rachelle. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. So how can our viewers now get more information to connect with you?
So all of my information will be down in the show notes. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, just look up my name, which will be as well in the show notes, Rachelle Rozon. And I, similar to Bethany, offer free consultations, connect calls, just to kind of see where you're at and if us working together would be a good thing. And if nothing else, just to support you and help you feel that you are not alone and just let you know that you're rocking it. So
exactly. Awesome.
Take advantage.
I will add all of Rachelle's notes here into the podcast so you guys can actually see all the notes and find her Instagram and all these wonderful places and her website as well. So it was a pleasure having you on the Nutritious and Delicious show, Rachelle. So thank you so much.